very excited to be talking to you, Rajat. And I have been through your background. It is so incredible and impressive. And today you're the managing director at Morgan Stanley. And I want to pick your brain and understand from you so that it can be very, very relevant and meaningful for all the youngsters and different people across the country who are facing, uncertainty like never before. And I don't know if you've been following, but at least in the startup world, there's been a lot of layoffs happening, furloughs are taking place. I would like to understand from you that if you had to tell young people how do they navigate their own journeys in this uncertain times, what would you say?
So I know this may sound cliched, Shraddha, but it's very important to sort of underline the fact that this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Right? It is about sort of staying calm and staying positive through this period of uncertainty. You and I don't know how long this will last, but from all indicators that we are getting now from the market, there is going to be an end state to this pandemic. So I think it's very important for people to realize that this is a period of time. It's not an infinite time. It's a period of time where we'll have to sort of just buckle ourselves in and make sure that we ride this storm out. So I think that's fundamental to anything and everything that you're thinking of doing. Now, obviously, it has consequences, right? With something like this, there are negative impacts that happen on the economy, on the working of certain organizations, like you mentioned. And I think we just have to sort of make sure that we are trying to do what we can from in dealing with these issues. You're absolutely right in terms of the startups. Yes, they are sort of getting impacted, but generally speaking, I think for a larger part of the industry and for the larger organizations that have steady bases, I think a lot of the organizations are geared up to ride this storm over. So it's probably pockets where the impact is severe, but my sense is that the larger organizations will sort of ride this storm out if they have their fundamentals right.
One of the things that I've been talking to a lot of industry experts and different very, very successful entrepreneurs and business leaders, and one of the things that comes out is that what everyone is talking about is that at every stage and every age, the need to constantly reinvent and learn. I want to understand, because you have been in the human resources space for such a long time, and the learnings that you've had, that what is that what are the one or two things that you think are essential for us to constantly be relevant, and even if something bad happens, right, like even if one is laid off, even if one gets into the salary cut zone, how do you constantly stay on top of your game?
I think a lot of us have been doing a lot of thinking about what this means, not just from an organization's perspective, but also from ourselves standpoint. I think from an organization, and I think I see this across a variety of organizations now, the need to invent has been accelerated.
Yeah.
The need to think through, the need to think outside the box, the need to create solutions that you thought were not possible at a pre-COVID stage are now being challenged and are now being accepted and implemented. So I think it's sort of accelerated the change process for a lot of organizations. I think from an individual's standpoint, the need to have resiliency built into your life as something that has come out in the forefront. There is clearly uncertainty. There's clearly a lot of nervousness that exists across the platform. I speak to colleagues and friends from across different organizations, and that seems to be the sort of underlying factor that keeps coming up about employees. People are feeling uncertain. Now, some organizations have gone ahead and made some very positive announcements about not doing anything radical during this phase, but some organizations haven't been able to do the same. So I think my sort of word of advice for youngsters specifically is, much as you may live whatever the way you want to live, and you sort of focus on living for the day, the need to build resilience in your economic system, in your financial system, for example, and in your life in general is very important. So start focusing on that a little bit more.
Rajat, I want to, understand from you also. You've worked for with diverse set of people. You've seen a diverse set of individuals, teams, leaders. Tell us some of the recipes or recipes. In COVID times now, all of us are looking at food more closely. And cooking. So, tell us some of the recipes that leads to a building of a successful, truly resilient team, and what are some of the traits that you've seen outstanding individuals who are leaders have.
So I think if I were to sort of single out one particular thing, I think it's the ability to communicate.
Hmm.
Uh, in times like this, the need to hear positive reinforcement, the need to hear constantly from the leadership is absolutely imperative. And I think if you're a good leader, you should have been reaching out and speaking to people, talking to people, and reassuring them of the fact that this is a phase that we are going through. Oftentimes, lack of communication creates uncertainty. So I'm a fundamental believer of the fact that you should have been communicating and communicating actively. I think the other aspect to it is a lot of people will look up to you and see what you are doing,
Yeah.
right? And the way you handle it as a leader is the way that they will get inspired to handle the issue. And I use a very simple example, right? It's very frustrating to be stuck at home, but there are a whole host of things that you can do at home. So you mentioned cooking, right? If you're seeing a leader sort of take the time out to cook and share stuff, then you'd be inspired to see and maybe believe that there is other stuff that you can learn. Maybe the leader is learning something, or he or she is exercising and sort of sharing those platforms over there. The moment they start to see you find a positive in this environment, they will hopefully be inspired to also find a positive in this. So I think those two are fundamental for a leader to do, to role model that you can be positive through this, and to communicate actively with the larger set of employee base that you manage.
Very true also, especially now that everyone is remote working, right? Like we're not even seeing each other.
Correct.
Do you see this working now post COVID and pre COVID, the work environment will fundamentally shift now, or is it like again something temporary and it will go back? And especially I'm asking from an India context, because we like to go to office, do 9 to 6, or whatever, 9 to 9, and yes, so and our managers expect us to be in the office. Do you think that's going to change, or it's temporary?
So I think we're playing a guessing game here. My sense is some of it will change.
Hmm.
I think the big change that will happen is that the belief about being able to work from home will be real. A lot of people, and this is, I think, a generational thing to a certain extent. A lot of people didn't necessarily completely believe that work from home can work, right?
Hmm.
And now that you've been in lockdown for 3 months plus, you suddenly realize that yes, it's possible to continue to run a business or do work while working from home. So I think that is going to change. Now, on the other side, and someone commented to me that it's fine when everyone else is working from home, then they sort of then it's okay to work from home. But
Mhm.
when some of the folks start to work from office, and then you're continuing to work from home, will questions be asked? Perhaps there will be, but equally, uh, I think you will also sort of accept the fact that you worked from home and it worked, right? So I think some of that will change. The 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 reinvention that some of the organizations have done in the way they've either been delivering services or expanded their horizon and started to indulge in different kinds of businesses, or for example, for HR, the ability to virtually onboard people during this phase and virtually integrate them to the organization is something that I think we can really leverage to expand our
Yeah.
our employee base. Or so I think some of these things are real positives that are going to come through. But is it sort of going to be a diametric 180-degree change? I don't think so. I mean, at least that's my personal view. I don't think it's going to be a 180-degree change.
Yeah, and one question I can't not ask you is in terms of, today more than ever, this whole mental health conversation is coming to the forefront, and more so, because we did a survey within our own team, and there were many youngsters who also said that, yeah, let's have more conversation on mental health, because we are alone, and there's so many things happening, because like you said also, that some are working, some are working remotely. What do you think, how should the companies, how should the leaders be prepared to work on this?
So let me just sort of caveat this answer first. I don't think mental health is something that has existed only now
Yeah,
in a COVID scenario. Look, it's been there and it's been real, and a lot of organizations have already been talking about mental well-being. In fact, a lot of organizations have already been doing a lot of work in this space of mental well-being. I think what COVID has done, and you mentioned isolation and working alone, is that it has sort of brought this even more in the in the limelight. It is when you sort of remove the social structure around people and isolate them in rooms and have them connect only through the virtual world, then you realize that then you really realize what isolation is about, and
yeah,
that has an impact in terms of mental well-being, etc. uh, so I think so do we need to continue to focus on that? Absolutely, yes. Again, one of the changes that I'm hoping this is going to produce, that people will start to acknowledge the importance of mental health even more, and therefore more and more organizations are going to start to focus and do a lot more in the space of mental health. uh, in this environment, I think I sort of go back to the fundamental thing that I spoke about, which is communication,
yeah,
right? uh, the need to sort of constantly communicate with people, with employees, is very, very important, and for mental health. Similarly, one of the things that is happening within this scenario is the sort of blurring of lines between your personal workspace and your office workspace, right? So you don't know when your day starts and you don't know when your day ends, and and that again creates stress in the system. So one of the things that we need to be very, very careful about ourselves is to make sure that we are sort of drawing some of those lines out and being able to segregate our personal life or our work life. But otherwise, you've got your machine on a table. Every time you are walking in the house, you are tempted to look at the machine and answer the email over there, and then it becomes like a 24-hour cycle, right? So I think that's important to do too.
yeah. I am very into that cycle. So they are not too much.
It's very difficult to sort of extract yourself. You mentioned what is going to change. All your interviews have always been face to face, and that's the comfort zone. Now we're doing it in a virtual mode. So I think I think we're just going to adapt and acknowledge that some of this technology is going to get leveraged by us, and we are going to be able to do a lot more without necessarily having to physically be present to do stuff.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, I want to come back to this question, which I was mentioning earlier on learning and education, right? Like we are seeing again, one of the conversations that we've seen in the last 3 months is this whole conversation around how edtech has now finally come to the forefront, and people are all learning, doing stuff, be it master classes, learning how to make better cocktails, to everything is happening online like never before. I want to understand from your lens, this whole paradigm of learning and education. Do you see it shifting now? And then also, I'm talking because in our context, and I also wanted to say that, we went to a college, and for me, just going to the college, that degree and everything was so relevant, right? Like, and then after that, the growth happens. But today we are living in a different world. How do you have to say people should look at? Should they still look at learning in that way, or should they look at learning in a new way? What does it all mean?
So I have to share this with you. Every time I now see an email about a webinar, I I I sort of, you know, I really don't know how to react. The number of webinars that have got organized in the last 3 months has been just crazy. I mean, you're getting webinars about everything and such. But having said that, uh, you know, I think again, it's the change process that a function is going through,
Yeah,
right? Uh, some of the topics that we always believed needed to have a professor in front and us sitting in a classroom and learning have got challenged. Uh, I think it's forced some of the institutions to adapt and adopt technology and use it, and therefore I think the reach of certain initiatives that they were previously holding on to has expanded significantly. uh, I see the simplest of example coming through in the schools, right? I've got two teenagers in the house, and they ran pretty much their last semester virtually,
yeah,
right? Without it necessarily sort of impacting the way they learn,
yeah,
right? Yes, it sort of eliminated or excluded, not eliminated, but excluded the social interaction that they had, which is very important to do. But but from a learning standpoint, it didn't necessarily sort of hamper them in the way they went through the last semester of school. So so I think part of it is going to be adapted. The thing that I still worry about, and I think still needs to be focused on, is
yeah.
the social aspect of some of these initiatives we are taking. How do you make sure that you're interacting and dealing with people beyond the screen, right?
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
that's something that I think we still need to focus on. But for edutech companies, that the expansion of this, the realization that their audience now acknowledges the fact that they can learn through Zoom is a massive sort of step forward for them.
And I think in some way, some part of it is going to now stay.
But
Um,
if you were to give me a choice of whether I want to go into a classroom and learn versus learn on Zoom, I think I'd still go back to college.
yeah, and that brings me to this question of the whole social construct, right? Like somewhere we are still human beings, and we are very much human beings, and there is, the merit if we go to workplace, like we talk about, the going to that coffee corner and having that conversation, or when you are learning, then the peers around you and people around you, it has been so extremely relevant. Do you think people today need to gear up? uh, and again, coming back to the resiliency, is that somewhere gear up that, hey, it might not be social, and how do you think professionals and individuals should look at managing their day, their experiences, their learning, their communication? Is it going to be a little more isolating?
I hope not. I hope not, because I think what is going to happen is that it's going to be at the end of this. My read is that this is going to be a blended outcome, right?
Okay.
There is going to be a fair bit of it which can be done virtually, but there'll also be a comeback to the world that we were used to, which is the whole social intersect with people. So uh, my sense is that these two worlds are going to coexist with each other, and depending on the kind of role that you're doing or the area that you are working in, etc., that balance would shift. Whether it's a 90-10 or a 10-90 or somewhere in the middle, would be a function of how organizations, or what organizations are doing, and how they're doing some of the things that they're expected to do. uh, the I think the break that has happened with this is that the virtual, the work from home opportunity, the pie has increased a little bit,
Hmm.
and my sense is that this is going to be now a balancing act between these two.
Yeah, yeah, I like the word that you said. It's going to be a blended of both the worlds,
Yeah.
the new normal and the what was normal before this. Yeah, yeah. Rajat, I want to ask you about your journey. We'd love to understand what has been some of your learnings as someone at your level, right, at a CXO level, managing large organizations, looking at human capital over the years. How have you seen, India evolve in that sense, or not evolve?
So things have changed, right? I mean, I look at the last 3 decades of working from the time that I started working to now. Things have really changed. No one could have imagined that we would be having a virtual conversation at the time that we started to work. So things have changed, and I'm going to sort of try and focus on my function, and then give you the perspective from a function standpoint, to then translate into what and how I think the world has so evolved to. When we started, we were largely an administrative function, right? Uh, that's what, mentally we were sort of given a framework to work within. To now, where this function is a key strategic function for the leadership group. So the evolution over the last 30 years has been dramatic, right? What was important and core to what we did 30 years ago is now being done by machines. And what we thought was never a role that HR would play 30 years ago is now a key role that we play. So the evolution of the function, the industry, etc., has been massive. uh, I think the acceptance of the fact that we are a frontline function now is a lot more, and as we speak, the evolution continues. So, you know, a few years ago, if you asked individuals about whether the HR person needed good mathematical skills, then the answer would have been possibly no. You're dealing with people and emotions, and therefore you don't really need mathematical skills beyond sort of preparing reports, etc. To now, when a lot of the decisions that you are making are based on math and analytics and stats, etc., right? So even today, in as late as 3 decades of working, I'm still sort of making a transition from realizing that now I have to learn a new skill, and make sure that I'm able to leverage that skill to make better decisions. So I think the process of evolution will continue, but you know from whatever I remember of 30 years ago, it is nothing like what it was 30 years ago, and I suspect another 10 years later it'll be nothing like what it is today.
Yeah, yeah, no, but you alluded to something very important, that all functions and all functions, all roles are so far, changing in such a rapid everyday basis, and technology is becoming so ubiquitous, right? Like, yeah, yeah,
And you have to accept the fact that technology is going to play a part of it. Now, I don't think that statement that people make, saying that, oh, technology will replace your role,
yeah,
is true.
yeah,
What it will do is it will push you out of that role to try and do something new, so that it can occupy the stuff that you have commoditized, and put processes and systems in place. And it'll get you to start to think about newer things that you'll need to put processes and systems in place, so that you can then hand over to technology to do. So I think that's the sort of, it'll keep pushing you up and up, to do more and more stuff, and continue to take the lower end of the spectrum, and take that off your plate, really.
yeah. Listening to you, one thing that is coming, to my mind is that people who are constantly ahead and do well are constantly reinventing, learning, and are open to what is happening around them. But Rajat, one of the challenges I also see is that when people start becoming senior, or they have done something for a long stretch of time, the mindset to change might sound very easy, but it becomes extremely hard, and very, very hard. And I can use the word, sometimes I find that people get stuck up in their approach, and their everything is. How do you think people should not get into that trap? Because I might think I'm very open and I'm constantly learning. Listening to you, I feel that you are one of those people who has, because you could make such a distinct, uh, you know, thing from 30 years. So basically, you have constantly reinvented, and that's why you are where you are. But how can people do that?
So I think my answer is going to be slightly different. My answer is that if you don't change, right, and it sounds cliched again, but if you don't change, you're going to get swallowed, right? Uh, you uh, you're almost being forced to think about new things, to adopt new things, to adopt technology, and if you don't sort of get onto the train, then you're going to be left behind on the station. So uh, and by the way, there are enough people who are getting left behind on the station because they are not sort of making that change happen for them. uh, so I think it's a default rather than anything else that you'll have to do. uh, the everyone, when they look at what next for them, will look at what they will need to change. That it's almost human nature to do that, to be able to adapt. And again, it's fundamental to triggering the change process, that you sort of realize that you will need to change. So I think that's the reality. Unfortunately, the older you grow, or the not older, I think that's the wrong word. I think the more experienced you have, a lot of your thinking is based on the experiences that you gather,
Yeah,
and therefore your experiences then determine the thinking, the process, the thought process, etc. So the more you learn the same thing, the more you will be ingrained into doing it the same way. I always tell people, I said, go out and learn, go out and find out, go out and try things. If you try things, you will realize whether they're good or bad. If you don't try it, then you don't have the uh, authority to say whether it's good or bad, right?
yeah,
So I think it's about trying new things. It's about experimenting with stuff, and sometimes things will work, and sometimes things won't.
yeah, yeah. Just openness to trying, openness to constantly.
This work from home is a really classic example on this one. A lot of organizations didn't believe that work from home could work
Yeah,
till it happened,
yeah,
right? And today, 3 months later, there are so many organizations that are 100% work from home and doing what they were supposed to be doing. So
yeah,
this is about obviously it was forced, but this is about an experiment that has proved successful.
yeah. Extremely, yeah, powerful. Yeah. So you try, yeah, you were forced to try, but the try, then you realize that it works, because I think as a country we didn't believe that work from home works.
Yeah, there are a lot of these aspects over there. I mean, uh, you know, uh, and I'll give you an example that a lot of organizations have done now, which is uh, you always believe that the individual needed to come into office to be integrated into the organization and onboarded on the organization, right? Uh, so if a person was not able to do that, you would wait till the person was able
Yeah,
to do that and physically come on board. Not anymore, right? You are running virtual sessions, you are running virtual tours of the office so that they get familiar with the office. You are having people come onto the Zoom calls and have conversations with people, and suddenly a newcomer is knows everyone, has seen everyone, and knows what the organization looks like, knows how things are done, and is onboarded. So you know again, these are things that have have been tried, and the experiments have been very successful.
yeah.
The Edtech thing that you spoke about is another example, right? People are now suddenly saying, yes, learning can happen. Schools are doing virtual sessions and saying they're successful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. This has been a very, very amazing, inspiring conversation. Tell me, before we end, if you had to tell again to all the young people and everyone, in their early days, mid career uh, level in their professions this year, this year, which is going to be, I not hopefully long, but this is going to be an uncertain year. What would you, one or two things that they should keep with them as they navigate this year?
Uh, Stay rational, stay connected. I think those are two absolutely key things that you want to, and stay calm actually. Uh, I said that right at the beginning. This is a phase, right? Don't make decisions based on a phase that you are going through.
Yeah.
Make decisions for the long haul. Uh, think about the implications from a long-term perspective rather than the next 6 months or whatever time period that we are in this phase. Uh, Now there will be circumstances that you will come up against which will force you to make some decisions in the interim, and that's fine. But the bigger decisions that you need to make about your life can't be about the next 6 months.
Yeah.
They have to be about your longer term career aspirations, etc. Right? So if you are sort of, you know, thinking about, for example, changing your job, right? Is it because of what is happening now, or is it because you've thought through about what will happen to you when you change your job in 2 years' time, right, or 3 years' time, or longer? So I think that's my advice to people. Just sort of hunker down, buckle up, ride the storm out. Don't take, don't make the big decisions because of what you're going through now.
Wow. I'm going to keep this, that this is a phase. This is not my life. This is a phase in my
Yes,
life.
absolutely,
And
absolutely. This is a phase.
thank you. Thank you so much, Rajat. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.